Hey, people. It's me again. Got a little interesting episode for you today. So, there's a book that I like. It is a Western esoteric book. This one right here. This book is the book that the Kybalion wishes it was. It's. I wouldn't say it. To me, I would say it's a little bit hermetic. I would say it's more hermetic than the Kybalion, at least. It's called The Dayspring of Youth, or you've probably read the title. But nonetheless, what is this book? How come you haven't heard of it and I have? This book is well known in certain circles. It was published in 1930s, early 20th century, or early 1900s it was published. And it's quite an enigma. What's in the book? What's in the book is a system, a cosmology, its own psychology, its own occult physiology. It's basically like the Theosophical Society. It's kind of that, but like mixed with alchemy. So this Western internal alchemical style, covered in a cloak of theosophical terms. That's basically what this book is. So it's about internal alchemy. And the guy in it, he uses the term yoga a lot. I think the way I interpret this book is this guy wanted to publish it, and so he didn't want to be known, and he also didn't want to use the vernacular he used. So what he did is he just kind of slapped in buzzwords that were going around at the time, like atom or yoga. And so you get this book where he keeps talking about yoga, but he just then, obviously true yoga is internal, but he's merely talking about only internal stuff. But there's a mystery behind this book, and the mystery is, who wrote it? In the front of the book, it says it's written by M. Maybe if you can see that, you can. If you can't, Dayspring of Youth, M. Oh, gotta hold it up to... Okay. M. What is M? So, nobody knows. Maybe I know. Maybe I figured it out. Maybe I figured it all out. I'm sure some people know. I'm sure the people who originally published this book know. But nonetheless, what is this book? So, M is an interesting term because it's related to theosophy. And so what happens when people relate things to theosophy? They go to theosophy and they go, who's M? And they look at the Mahatma letters and they go, Moria, of course. And, this is the whole... in the Theosophical Society, people like, Mabel Collins, had clairaudience and could speak to Master Hilarion. And so her book, The Light on the Path, is sometimes scribed as under Master Hilarion wrote this book, not Mabel Collins. So this is one of those cases where a lot of people, if you ask some people, they'll say, it's probably, I don't know, it was written by Moria, or it was channeled by someone who channeled Moria, or some of these are teachings of Master Moria. And I was like, reading the book, it doesn't seem that way. These are clearly intimate practices and exercises and experiences that come from someone who's not a perennial immortal master who's been here this entire race, but someone who has awoken. Maybe they had some training in a past life, but they have awoken this life. And they have they're an advanced occultist, but they're not, they're an adept, not a perfected immortal Saint Germain type person. That's what I got from it. That's the feeling I got. So how do I reconcile this? So I was looking through the book, this Dayspring of Youth book, and I found a little interesting thing online. So what I'm going to pop up here, boom. This is a first edition copy of the Dayspring of Youth. It's got a nice blue cover, not like the red one that I brought up here. But this intro, I kind of want to buy it. I'll just fork out the money and get a book I already own. But this edition's very interesting because this seal here, if you can make it out, if you know what this seal is, you know what, you've read some occult literature. But some people may recognize this seal, but this seal is missing from this later edition. This later edition does not have this seal. It has this picture. It has Dayspring of Youth by M. It has We Seek, We Serve. I'm not sure if I don't have London and New York. But this seal is the key. This seal is missing. This is the seal of the brothers. Who were the brothers? Nobody knows. But where does the brothers show up? So I want to make a completely left field jump, and I want to jump to another piece of occult literature. Specifically, let me just pick this up, this bad boy here, the Compt de Gabalis. The Compt de Gabalis was originally written in French. So Compt de Gabalis just means the Count of the Kabbalah. This book, originally written in French, published in like 1630s, 1670s, something like that. It was originally published anonymously. Once again, no one knows who published this. I think they attribute to some guy now, like maybe they figured it out. But no, it's another mysterious book which just kind of appears and talks about the solar force and elemental magic and etc., etc., etc. Very hard to find nowadays, especially this edition which has the commentary. Because if you get it without the commentary, it's very hard to read. But this one's good. But you can kind of see it there actually. What's this little here? What's that little there? What's that? Is that the brother's seal I see? Oh my god, what happens when we open it up? Oh look! We seek, we serve, that thou mayest illumine thy torch at its source. Written on the front cover, written on that page there. And oh look, another seal. Another brother's seal. Oh my lordy. What else do we find when we look at this seal? Oh, we look at this. Oh, okay, printed old Bower Street, blah, 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 blah. Commentary. It's got extended commentary. This copy doesn't have it on here, but in some, oh yeah, you can see once again the seal is there again. This copy doesn't have it, but you can find other copies, and there's one copy PDF online, which maybe I'll like post in the description. Sometimes that book with this brother, so we can connect these two books. We can connect these two books here. They are written by the same order. Or not, sorry, not written. This one was clearly written in like the 1600s. But what happened? In the early 19th century, it was republished with an extended commentary, this book. And the people who republished it also published the first edition of this book. This is a later edition, the red hardcover back. So am I boring you yet? Or are you absolutely riveted? So what I'm getting at is, you know, we all go online and we look up Illuminati or Freemasons or Rosicrucians or whatnot. There is a secret, an actual secret society, which you can't look up on the internet. And it's called the Brothers. That's it. That's just what they call it. It probably doesn't even exist anymore. It probably doesn't exist, but at one point in time it arose. It came into existence, and it then had its time in the sun. It had its own teachings. Its master possibly awakened its students, and then maybe it pitted off and died. But the thing that's interesting about it is it's left a kind of a footprint on this world. What footprint has it left? Not a government conspiracy like other secret societies. What it has left is literature. And that is what is fascinating. So who were the brothers? Well, we may never know. However, one thing we can tell is we can start to connect other books to these books. So the Dayspring of Youth has a sequel called The Lord God of Truth Within. You can pick that one up and read that as well and extend your knowledge of this, make it a kind of a trilogy, like, okay, so this book is like a foundation document. And then what is this book then? This book kind of becomes the teachings of a teacher who then compiled a lot of his lessons and decided to make a book with a function. And so that would be the sequel to this book, is a similar thing. But then what else can you extract from it? In this book, in the introduction, he thanks a few people. He thanks them. And one of the people he thanks is an MJ. So he says, thank you in the preface. If you ever get this, oh God, it's not coming up. You can't see it, But right at the bottom, maybe you can make out MJ there. There's a WLR and an MJ on the bottom line. Who is MJ? Later on in the book, he quotes something, and they quote a little. There's a little bottom header. There's a little footnote where it quotes a book called The White Brother. Now, The White Brother is impossible to find. It's a non-existent book. You can find it in PDF form on Holy Books, I believe, The White Brother. And what it is an autobiography. Whose autobiography is it? It's an autobiography by a man named Michael Just. So I just said you can't find it anywhere. This is like a copy I had printed and perfectly bound. So I myself made this. But nonetheless, you can find the PDF online. Just go to holybooks.com. But what is this then? This is a biography of a man named Michael Just. Okay, cool. Who's that? Why should I care? Michael Just is an interesting individual. Once again, if you've heard of him, you know who he is. In London, in the in the kind of that golden age of Rosicrucianism, where Dion Fortune and Aleister Crowley and all of occult, Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, all of that stuff, when all of that stuff was happening, there was a bookshop that popped up. It was called the Atlantis Bookshop, and it was I wouldn't say it was massive, but nonetheless, all the occultists knew about it, and all the occultists kind of went there, and Michael Just himself became a kind of a magnet for many different occultists. And I assume people respected him. And there's a correspondence, actually, between Aleister Crowley and Dion Fortune, where they mention Michael Just, like, oh, Michael Just introduced me to such and such. Oh, yes, I remember you at Michael Just, or something like that. It's like he pops up in weird literature. Like, if anyone has read that book, The Zelator, in the middle of The Zelator, randomly, there's a bit where the author mentions Michael Just, how the author actually met Michael Just when the author was like a kid. And he met Michael Just as an old man, and he said Michael Just was this weird guy who was like, I remember you from Egypt. Like, so he was this guy who had kind of faculties, clairvoyance, right? It was very interesting. So Michael Just, what can we extract from this book? In this book, Michael Just, he calls himself the White Brother, or does he call himself? He basically talks about his journey, kind of through life and school, tearing out the wings of his imagination and whatnot, hasn't happened to us all, but nonetheless, he's a poet as well. He's not very good at poetry, but nonetheless, he goes through all these stages: atheism, communism, but he wants to still help people, and then he eventually gets into occultism. He eventually finds a teacher, but the teacher's a bit of a fraud, but nonetheless, he starts a kind of a publishing company, and then some guy comes into his bookstore randomly and begins to teach him. And in this book, he talks about his master, and he says he calls his master M. So that's like the moniker he gives his master. Ooh, that's something very interesting then. So you have M, the master of Michael Just, who begins to teach him. And then in this book, he says something interesting. He says, my master, he began to teach me, and he said, I need to have proper esoteric, a proper foundation of esoteric literature. And so he gave me his own copy of Le Compt de Gabalis. He said his master gave him this to read, and he gave him his own personal copy with annotations and notes and said, please give it back, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God, the plot thickens but also illumines. So we have Michael Just, and we have this white brother, and we have clearly the M who wrote the Dayspring of Youth is the master of Michael Just. And this M used the Compt de Gabalis as a sort of tool in his teaching school. The Brothers, which is this illumined secret society of individuals who would awaken their internal faculties and travel the astral realm and whatnot. Absolutely fascinating that this existed at one point in time. So who was the author? So it's very... I'll post the link in the... I'll make sure the link's posted in the description below. But I found a patent online, patented in the early 1900s for a specific book binding. And on the specific book binding, you can see in the image, if you download the PDF, there's an image of what the book binding was supposed to be. You can see a seal that resembles the Brothers' seal. And the people who registered the patent, one is called Sarah Dudley, which, did I mention it? The Compt de Gabalis, in some other versions of the Compt de Gabalis, the translator or the extended commentary is written by Lotus Dudley. So Lotus Dudley, okay, so there's a Sarah Dudley who registered this patent for this weird book binding, and then on top of that, then it mentions this guy Charles Thurston. Who's Charles Thurston? Okay. This is where it gets interesting. So, Michael Just started that bookshop, the Atlantis Bookshop, right? to visualize it with me, people. Atlantis Bookshop, he started it with a friend. In this book, he calls him David, but because Michael Justice is a real person, you can just look up on Wikipedia, he started it with his friend, Paul Brunton. You know who Paul Brunton is? Paul Brunton is a very famous spiritualist writer, basically. Spiritual, metaphysical writer. He's fallen out of vogue nowadays. Like, most people haven't heard of him, but I've met an old guy once who was like, oh yeah, Paul Brunton, I've read everything he ever wrote. He wrote a lot of books. Paul Brunton is very famous. And if you find Paul Brunton's biography written by his son, you will find this. In the middle of Paul Brunton's biography, Paul Brunton, the friend of Michael Just, whose master was the person who wrote the Dayspring of Youth, you'll find this picture in Paul Brunton's biography of this gentleman here, this scholar and gentleman with a nice hat and a pipe, and this little bow tie here with some occult tomes, and it says, "My Godfather." So this is clearly Paul Brunton's son who's writing this biography, saying, "Brother M, Mr. Thurston, an advanced occultist." Hell yeah, boy. This solves it, basically. Obviously, we don't really know who he is, but fundamentally, we have an image of this master. This master is a man named Thurston, and if the patent is correct, the patent theory, then his name is Charles W. Thurston. Perhaps his alchemical priestess wife is Sarah Dudley. Together, they came to London. They used the Compt de Gabalis as a teaching tool to start their new society, and maybe they hooked up with a guy at a bookshop like, "Hey bro, can you help us publish a new copy of this book for our students?" So then they published a copy with an extended commentary to help people, to help their students, but also to give it to humanity as well, give the chance to humanity. And then on top of that, within their own kind of group and circulating it, they then eventually, collected some of their lessons together and made this book, The Dayspring of Youth, which was then published and circulated. And then eventually, of course, there was a sequel to the Dayspring of Youth, which was published posthumously. So there we have it. It's very interesting. This author M is not Moria, but a man named Charles W. Thurston, an unknown occultist who possibly came from another country. So maybe America, he would have spoken English. Maybe America, or maybe he was an erudite gentleman from another country. But nonetheless, he came from another country, settled in London with possibly his wife, and started off a secret society, the Brothers, and that have left their mark on this world in the form of this literature that they leave us. Fascinating. Absolutely. I found that really interesting. Anyway, that was just my kind of skullduggery looking at who, going through who wrote what. This has been a big mystery for a lot of people, me included. So that's who I think wrote the Dayspring of Youth. This is who I think wrote the Dayspring of Youth. You can, maybe if you still want it to be Moria, maybe there is some connection, because it is theosophic in essence. And some people have connected the Dayspring of Youth and its sequel to Nicholas Roerich, who, if you know who Nicholas Roerich is, you would know that his wife was very involved in TS happenings and Agni Yoga, and she herself was said to have clairaudience. And she herself, it said, was connected to Moria and wrote transcribed letters channeled from Moria. So that society that they started, Nicholas Roerich and his wife, was American. It is possible that there was this American Agni Yoga Society who Charles Thurston and Sarah Dudley belongs to. They used the techniques to awaken themselves. And then after awakening, they left. They left their country, because you can't be a prophet in your own town. They left their country, went to England and started teaching and made this society, made the Brothers. Who knows? They could still potentially exist. So at one point in time, there was Michael Just, Paul Brunton, Charles W. Thurston, Sarah Dudley, and the other person mentioned in the preface to this book, WLR. So possibly 5 members of a secret society that has been completely lost to time, forgotten, whose literature we still have. Anyway, if you want to buy this book, you can buy it off Amazon. If you want to buy the Compt de Gabalis, the copy with the commentaries is, as I understand it, very hard to come by nowadays, although new publications come out all the time. Who knows, you may be able to find a good one. Make sure it has the commentary, though. Different people have done commentaries. Apparently there's one by John Yarker, so he's a famous Freemason. apparently that commentary is quite good as well. I've read this one, and I thought this commentary was good, by the Sarah Dudley, Lotus Dudley one, allegedly. This doesn't say Sarah Dudley or Lotus Dudley at the front of it, but if you find the copy that says commentary by Lotus Dudley, it's exactly the same commentary. So it's good stuff. It's good stuff. I highly recommend to read this book. Hopefully that has fascinated you and not bored you. But anyway, you can... If anyone has any more information, please tell me more. I would love to hear more about the brothers and Charles W. Thurston or Paul Brunton, or if anyone knows anything more about Michael Just. Put it in the comments. Let's get to the bottom of this. Let's find out more things about these people. Let's all together. Let's find the brothers. Find them here, and then let's find them in the astral.